Hello, thanks for joining me. So I made a video a short while ago called Astrology Q&A, and in the making of that video, I always knew that I wanted to do a follow-up video with some more things that I wanted to discuss about astrology. So these are actually some of the things that I wrote in my notes app before making that video. I just didn't put them in that video, so this is kind of like the follow-up in a way. I don't know if I'm going to call it Astrology Q&A Part 2 or anything like that, because this one doesn't feel so much like general questions. I don't know what I'm going to call it, but it's certain things that I want to discuss about astrology. I do also want to say that we have an aquarium here, so if there's a bit of a noise from the aquarium, I don't know if it's showing, I don't know if it's like coming through the noise, but if the noise is coming through too much, I hope that's not too annoying for people. So I wanted to do a little discussion about some of the benefits of astrology as I see it, right? So, like I mentioned in a previous video, sometimes I have times when I doubt certain elements of astrology in terms of its relevance to my own day-to-day life, but there are certain benefits that I find on like a spiritual level or psychological level that I think are important to recognize and discuss. Right. And so one of the things that I like about astrology is that it gives me more of a sense of everybody being unique and everybody having their own path and their own specific strengths and weaknesses and psychological tendencies and psychological challenges that they're trying to work through in this lifetime, right? So everybody has a very unique birth chart. Of course, there are birth charts that are similar, but it's kind of like we do come in with our own specific birth chart, right? We come into this life with our own specific birth chart. It's like our own stamp, right? And so sometimes I think about how that is really good in the sense that it makes me understand or be more connected to the idea that we actually do have our own unique, specific paths and lives and strengths and weaknesses. And this idea of comparing yourself to others is something that I really personally struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with it. And it's so easy nowadays with social media and seeing pictures of everybody and things like that, and kind of people being successful, and you're maybe comparing yourself to other people's success or what other people are doing, or just other people's personalities and things like that, other people's strengths. But the birth chart shows one of the things that's good about the birth chart is that it shows that we come in with our own unique stamp. And so when you're exploring a birth chart, you're exploring the ways in which your natural tendencies and gifts and challenges, how they're interacting, and how you can start to think about how you can potentially use them in the world, or how you can cope with that in the world if you're talking about the challenges, right? So I have a lot of squares in my birth chart, right? And so it results in this kind of inner tension in a way, or there's a lot of certain challenges on a psychological level. Planets are interacting with each other in a way that is stressful, tense, and it literally causes this kind of inner tension. And I see this a lot with people who have a lot of squares, or I see certain tensions in them that are indicated by their squares, right? So if somebody has even a couple of squares, they have the tension of those two planets inside them fighting. And there's also, of course, oppositions, and there's trines, and like there's other things that can make challenges happen. Even trines can be challenging, right? I have a lot of trines as well. That can be challenging. But it just shows that we are living out, I like to think of it this way. It's almost like something that gives me comfort and a sense of serenity sometimes, if that makes sense, right? So it gives me this comfort where it's like, I know that if I think about it in this framework, then it's like, I know that people are coming here with their own agenda, with their own soul agenda, their own challenges, strengths, weaknesses, personalities, their own paths, their own uncertainties even about their path. It's not like we come in here and we immediately know what our path is and we follow that path. It's that we each have our own trajectory and our own strengths and weaknesses. And I think sometimes when I'm feeling down, for example, or comparing myself to others or something, sometimes it's like I recognize in that moment, or it helps me when I recognize in the moment that actually I have my own strengths and my own uniqueness, and other people have that as well. And so we're not here really to compare ourselves to each other, right? We're here to live out our own path. And so the astrology chart, the birth chart, kind of shows the different specific ways and the nuanced ways that we are actually dealing with life and with the world in our own way. So even if you have a lot of squares, like I do, I've seen people who have even more squares, but like I have a lot of squares, and so for me that is it's like certain challenges that I need to work through. And it's like it's almost like I like to think of it as like my soul basically chose to have these nuanced characteristics in my psychology, if that makes any sense, so that I can work through something. And it's something that it's kind of a bit of a mystery as well, because I don't know what happens, after we leave here or before we come here. I don't really know, right? But it just resonates with me, this idea that maybe we did choose our birth charts. Maybe we chose, maybe some kind of soul, if you want to call it that, chose our birth charts, and it is here for a reason. We have it for a reason, and it's just about learning to recognize that and learning to work with that. And like the challenges that we have are actually things that are they're universal, but they're also unique to us in the way that we experience them. And so it's just about learning to work through our challenges and realize that we have our own unique tendencies. And so sometimes when I'm feeling down, that helps me. When I think about my birth chart, or when I think about other people's birth charts, I think, okay, well, that person is like that, and they're working through something by being like that. And I can't control other people can't control me. And so I have my own stuff that I'm working through that might be annoying for other people. But when you look at my birth chart, it's right there. You can see it. You can see the challenges that I have that might be annoying or irritating for other people, right? But it's in the birth chart. If you really look deeply, it's in the birth chart, right? So it's kind of like I came here with certain intentions, and other people came here with their intentions. And so we kind of have to just kind of learn to work with each other and work with ourselves and our own inner challenge that we're working with, right? And we can't control what the other person's birth chart is doing. Other people can't control what our birth chart is doing. It's us. It's me that is doing the work. It's me that is living my path and my challenges, and other people are doing their thing. And all we can do is be compassionate and learn from each other and learn with each other, right? I believe that. I think that's important to recognize. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I probably don't have the most amount of knowledge about this, but I want to have a discussion about sort of like some of my thoughts about astrology in terms of where it might be headed in the future. So I think astrology is something that has always kind of been on the outskirts of mainstream society to some degree, depending on what way you look at it, really. I mean, more in-depth astrology, the more psychological astrology has always, I think, been a little bit more on the outskirts of mainstream society. And I think that being said, over the past few years, there has been kind of a wave of, maybe younger people becoming interested in astrology. And maybe it is something that has become a little bit more accepted in certain ways that it wasn't really before. And I'm always curious to think about how that might become even more the case in the future. So I don't know if astrology will ever become something that is, every day for every person, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's ever going to be something that is just generally accepted as a thing that works with what is going on the planet. But people like me, or people who are interested in astrology, we tend to have like an understanding of certain things about astrology. We have like a feeling for it. And I'm not a professional astrologer, really. I don't have like I'm not somebody who understands every aspect of it. But I think people who are interested in astrology, they do have like a sixth sense for these things almost, and they can feel that intuitively the things that are actually like coming from astrological ideas that seem to work. So we have like a sixth sense and an intuition for astrology. And so we can sense that there is something going on astrologically, right? And I think that is something that is still not fully accepted, right? It's not something that if I tell, if I go and survey people in my town, for example, about astrology on the street, like, what are your feelings about astrology? I think at least some of the responses would be very negative. And I'm thinking about how, maybe this is something that will become less so in the future. And I'm thinking about, especially, more in-depth astrology. I'm thinking about, Pluto being now in Aquarius. Maybe that's going to change some perceptions about astrology. Aquarius is a sign that I would associate with just the idea of astrology. Uranus is one of the rulers of Aquarius, and I would associate Uranus with astrology, kind of with the concept of astrology. And I think also, when Pluto, this is far into the future, but when Pluto goes into Pisces, maybe that's also going to facilitate some kind of difference in the way that people are perceiving astrology, because Pisces is about sort of like the collective unconscious, I would say. If Aquarius is more like the collective consciousness, I would say Pisces is like the collective unconscious, right? And astrology is so much to do with what is in the back of our heads, right? It's intuition. It's coming from somewhere that we can't explain, right? We can't prove necessarily with sort of formulas. As far as I know, I can't prove with formulas why astrology works, but it's like unconsciously or subconsciously or intuitively, I seem to see or feel into some aspects of it that seem to work. And so it works on that level, right? And Pisces because Pisces has to do with collective unconscious. I think maybe when Pluto goes into Pisces, there's going to be some kind of overhaul with people's, collective unconscious, the collective unconscious. So maybe astrology will become something that becomes like a revolution in people. Maybe it will become even more mainstream in some sense. Maybe it will be something that more people will accept. And because Pisces is very compassionate and empathetic, maybe when Pluto is in Pisces, people will also lean towards being more compassionate and empathetic with each other through the use of astrology. I think people that are using astrology, like in-depth astrology, not just sun sign astrology, people that are using in-depth astrology, they tend to have a compassionate and empathetic side to them, right? They tend to be compassionate in the sense that they can understand that there's some patterns and there's some things going on that are working in like an invisible way, but it is visible as well when you really look at it, right? But it's invisible in the sense that we can't like prove it with formulas and all these things, and we can't do all that thing to kind of prove it, right? But it's still intuitively we can sense it, right? So I think with Pluto traveling through Aquarius, and eventually after that it will travel through Pisces, I think maybe it'll be interesting to see the progression of astrology and the progression of collective ideas about astrology and other similar things that allow for a more compassionate and empathetic approach to other people, right? So there's other things we can use to understand people and to be empathetic and compassionate towards people, right? Astrology is just one of them, but that's just my own personal view that maybe that will make a difference. And of course, because if Pluto is traveling through Aquarius and then traveling through Pisces after that, to me that signals some kind of change in people's perceptions of astrology, or some kind of overhaul when it comes to astrology. And there will be so many other effects of Pluto in Aquarius and Pluto in Pisces. I can't even talk about all of them, but I think that's something that will be interesting to maybe, observe. And I have another question that I was going to put in the previous astrology Q&A video, but I forgot to put it in. So I'm just going to quickly answer it. And that question is, do I have a favorite sign? So that's kind of just for fun. So I would have to say that I can't really have a favorite sign, just because every sign has its strengths and weaknesses, and there's so many different things that come into people's astrology charts. And so you can't just say that, this person is a Gemini, this person is a Taurus, so that's what they're going to be like, because there's so many things that will be in effect when it comes to their birth chart. But I've always thought that, just as a concept, and as usually the people that I see, I tend to like Taurus and Scorpio and Pisces, right? And I think Taurus, because Taurus, at least when it's healthy, in its best nature, it's this very kind of warm, earthy, grounded energy that I think is good for me. I have Venus in Taurus, so I value those qualities. I've kind of met and seen Taurus people that are kind of warm. They have this kind of warm, earthy quality to them, kind of this steady, slow, they feel safe almost, right? But of course it can vary, like I say, it can vary based on other things in their chart, but just, I tend to like Taurus. But like I say, I can't really just choose one and that's my favorite. But just as like a fun discussion, I would say I like Taurus usually. And I like Scorpio, because I have Moon in Scorpio and Pluto in Scorpio. Scorpio is kind of digging to the depths, and it tends to be interesting in that. Of course, there's a dark side that is quite noticeable with Scorpio. There's dark sides to every sign. I might even make a video about that in the future, the dark and light sides of all the signs. But I think with Scorpio, there's a definite dark side that is kind of known about in society almost. But I like Scorpio's concentration and its complexity. I think scorpionic people can be quite complex in like an interesting way, in which they're digging out information that others maybe don't see. And I tend to like Pisces as an energy, or as a concept, even if I don't necessarily always, I haven't known that many Pisces people, but I may not always like everything that a Pisces person brings to the table or anything like that. But I tend to like Pisces as a concept, because it's compassionate and empathetic, and it's connected, as like I was talking about before, to the collective unconscious. So it tends to have ideas and intuitions that come from some other realm, that tend to be poetic. I know a Pisces sun who wrote poetry, and it just in general is very sort of compassionate, and it kind of sees into situations in a compassionate and empathetic way. But there's good and bad sides to every sign. I don't even want to say it like that, because it doesn't really make sense. But there's different levels of expression, right? So you can't just choose one. But this video is already longer than I thought it would be, but I'm glad I got out some of these thoughts about these things when it comes to astrology. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment down below, and subscribe if you want more content from me. I will be making more content hopefully soon. And leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Thank you for listening and watching. Thanks. Take care.